Go.
Hello and welcome to the Saga of the Clone Saga, aka the Clone Zone, coming to you live from VR. I am Billy.
I'm Mike.
And I am Vincent, and our sponsor today is this issue of New Warriors, number 66, which we are discussing today.
I can't see it, but it makes me want to vomit.
I'll discuss this in more detail towards the end of the episode, but I got this for my speedball bind. I'm very happy we do this podcast because otherwise I wouldn't know that this is such an important issue to the speedball saga.
You're a lonely man, aren't you?
Yep. So today, for the most of today, we're talking about the arc Cyberwar, which this is our final story with a cover date of 1995. So we're moving past our birth year and into 1996.
Well, Billy, when were you born?
1999.
Really?
Yeah.
God, I feel old now.
You are old.
Wait, you're younger? That's fucking weird because you're
That's
younger
weird.
than my brother. All right, so Cyberwar crosses through the four main books, but we also have two little interludes to talk about this episode. We're going to be talking about an issue of Green Goblin and an issue of New Warriors, which take place during this. Green Goblin we'll talk about in chronological order because it spins off directly, and New Warriors we're going to cover at the very end. So moving into the first part, we have Web of Scarlet Spider number 2. This is I think this is a pretty bad cover. I don't think we really have that many great covers this episode.
Oh, we don't.
Ben is like super heavily inked on this cover. It's kind of weird.
It's once again, it looks like one of those early digital colorings where it's just Marvel just can't figure it out.
Yeah. And this is the usual Tom DeFalco, Todd Zago writing combo. But on art, we have Tom Morgan, at least on breakdowns. And then we have 3 finishers / inkers, 2 of which don't really spark my memory. I don't recognize him. So the art in this issue is kind of trash. And that could be due to the schedule, to the multiple inkers, the stupid plot, which just necessitates cringy art. But Tom Morgan, he has the potential to be a decent 90s artist. He did a lot of Len Kaminsky's 90s Iron Man run, but not good here.
What's funny is the 2 issues that I think have the best art. Well, I mean, we'll get to those later, but I think the Green Goblin and New Warriors have the best art out of any of the stuff we read this week.
Yeah, I think this whole Scarlet Spider retitle era, there must have been scheduling stuff because it's just been trash all the way through. So, though he's catatonic in real life, Seaward Trainer is still stuck in the VR program like we left him last. And then we get a splash page of Ben wearing a headset, as Billy is now, and being described as a hacker. And I'm like, oh boy, I gotta buckle up. It's about to get trash.
This is my least favorite of the 90s tropes with the VR, hackers, cyber, whatever shit. It's so overdone in 90s culture, and it was never done well. It was bad every time.
What's crazy is I'm surprised it's taken us this long to get to a stupid VR virtual reality thing, because you would have thought it would have came earlier.
Well, at least get to the reveal, because as we'll get to later, we've kind of had virtual reality stuff earlier. We just didn't know it yet. So the club owner, Jason So, is going to meet with Alistair Smythe, as was teased at the end of the last arc. And he jokes about whether Ben has any responsibility, because get it, power and responsibility. And then Angela Yin recognizes Ben as Peter again and just assumes that he's undercover for a news story. Which, again, I don't understand. I never understand. Is Peter literally just a journalist, a photojournalist, or is he going undercover and writing these exposés?
Never written anything there.
Yep. So then So's bodyguard, his lead bodyguard, finally thinks to do a background check on Ben. And Trainer somehow anti-hacks him and makes up a full backstory for Ben. Which I think would be interesting if we got to hear like Ben's completely fake biography.
But nope.
Nah.
And then with Smythe, we get a reference to the Invasion of the Spider Slayers arc from Amazing Spider-Man 368 to 373, which was kind of near the very end of the Michelini era. Maybe it was kind of half decent still back then, but probably not really.
Who drew that? Was it Eric Larson at that point?
No, that was Bagley.
Okay.
And that arc is when Alistair Smythe mutated his body to look really stupid. And this doesn't make it clear, but like his body now, it's actually a weird biological layer of armor.
Yeah.
It's described as like a carapace, or however you say it, kind of like a beetle. It's really creepy. And he has those disgusting shoulder appendages.
Which in the cartoon fired lasers.
Yeah, they do in the comics too. I don't think we see it in this arc at all, though.
No.
I mean, we never really see him. Well, he has a brief fight with Doc Ock, but it's for like 2 panels.
Yeah, he doesn't fire him at all in this.
Before we move
Every time
on
I see him,
from
like, oh yeah, he's got those disgusting looking shoulder appendages.
Yeah, before we move on from him, he's another character that wants to complete his father's work in destroying Spider-Man, which is so common.
And so and Ock, they agreed to a summit at the Children's Zoo, and neither of them plans to play it safe. Plans to play nice and go along.
To be honest, when they said Children's Zoo, my mind immediately flashed to like the Central Park like zoo, and I was like, oh, is the Punisher going to show up?
And so and Smythe, they bring in their cyber slayers, and they think Ben is on their side because he was kind of protected So earlier because it's Ben Reilly, and he was fighting the Ock, and so together, not really intentionally working together, but they trash Ock's crew, and I'm hoping we never see those characters again. And then Ock swears to kill Ben, and So immediately is like, hey, I should betray Smythe. And so that was the whole first issue. Not much happened. But now we move into Ass number 2, Amazing Scarlet Spider. This is still, I love this acronym.
Because it's so fitting for how the books are at this point.
Yep. And we have a new character alert, sound the alarm. We have Joystick. And the cover...
Joystick's her name, but murder's her game.
Yep. And the cover doesn't completely blow its wad because her back is to us. So they save the full reveal for actually in the issue. So you got to buy it off the stands for this new all-star Spider-Man villain.
Does she have any appearances after this arc?
Probably not.
I think she has one. Well, no, she actually does have a ton, but she has one in the Clone Saga, but I'm not sure if it's a flashback. We'll get to that soon, so we can double check that. But otherwise, she later joins the Thunderbolts.
Oh, okay.
Kind of weird. Around, like, right before the Civil War era.
Oh, so like the good Thunderbolts written by Warren Ellis.
No. No, Warren Ellis is in Dark Reign. Before Civil War, it's still Fabian Nicieza.
Oh, okay.
It was called New Thunderbolts for a while, and then it got renumbered for 100.
Oh, okay.
So this is on Ass number 2. We have the usual team of DeFalco and Bagley, but again, like we mentioned last episode, like Bagley's art looks pretty rushed and bad.
It's really hard to believe this is a Mark Bagley drawn comic book.
So
it looks so different.
We meet this Joystick woman. She's in Paris talking to a referee because she's involved in the Great Game, which I guess is a battle royale between vigilantes. And so this is ridiculous. So this is a quote from Glenn Herdling, who was a editor on the Spider-Man books at this point, and he's actually written some of the like super filler stuff so far. So this is a quote. I was watching a lot of WWF wrestling at the time, as was my fellow Spider-Man group editor, Mark Bernardo. And we saw ways in which we could incorporate a lot of the intrigues, sudden alliances, surprise betrayals, and masterful manipulations seen in that paragon of sports entertainment.
Okay, so, here's the problem with that statement. They're watching the WWF in 1995, which, here, I'm going to go on my own tangent here. 95 is famously the worst year for the company ever because Diesel was the champion. We're still like 3 years away from Stone Cold Steve Austin, like really becoming Stone Cold Steve Austin. I just think, like, wrestling's not even at the boom yet. Like, the WWE is faltering at this point in time. So, if you're getting your storyline ideas from that era, oh, Jesus Christ.
I just thought it was hilarious, though. So her next target is Scarlet Spider. But it's not clear how this stupid game works because he's clearly not in on it. So you have to, like, engage a target that's not already in the game, and then they join the game without fully giving consent. It doesn't make sense.
It seems like an awfully convoluted set of rules. It was actually reminding me of Highlander.
Okay. And then we get introduced to Ben for this issue with this interlude where he's breaking up a gang war over a pizzeria. And there's like this weird, like, semi-political commentary. And I'm like, is this like this really weird, like, not clear do the right thing reference? That's what I was thinking when I read it. But that movie also came out like 6 years before this. So I have no idea. He's back on for a date with Carrie, the real estate agent or whoever she is. And then we learn that Stunner shows up. And, like, Ock puts her in the AI or something. It doesn't really make sense here. And it comes up later, which we'll get to. Also, in this sequence, Ock's AI buddy, like this guy that she's been talking to, this AI this whole time, he's like blue and blurry. And I'm like, is that in story? Is he blurring himself so that Stunner doesn't know what he looks like? Or is that this weird, dumb artistic choice where they're putting off their own reveal? But it's like his eventual form isn't a reveal anyways. That didn't make sense to me either. It could have just been poor art editing. And so Ken Ellis published an article linking S.H.I.E.L.D. to organized crime. And so then S.H.I.E.L.D. tasks Ben Reilly to go put pressure on Ken, go bust up the Bugle, make sure they don't write about S.H.I.E.L.D. And then we get Joystick trying to find Ken Ellis because she thinks that'll clue her into the Scarlet Spider, since he writes about him all the time. And she runs into Phil Urich, Ben Urich's nephew, who is an intern at the Bugle. And we already know at this point that he is the Green Goblin. And so Phil tips Ellis off on a Green Goblin sighting after Joystick leaves. And so we know that everyone is going to converge in this spot. And then we get the reveal of Joystick's horrible costume. What did you guys think of this?
I really didn't think much of it. I was just like, oh, it's terrible. And I kind of moved on.
Yeah, she has like a dumb, like, half domino mask, which doesn't make any sense. But we learn later she doesn't care about her secret identity at all anyways.
I've definitely seen worse costumes, especially from this era. So, it's, like, not that bad, honestly.
Yeah, it was just like, it was nothing to write home about or elicit, like, oh my god, this is a terrible kind of reaction. It's just like a meh reaction, really.
But, like, they don't explain it here. What are those things that she throws? Like those weird purple batons?
I assume they're also like these VR, like, hard light hologram bullshit, but they don't explain it.
Right.
Just to fit with the theme, even though she has no connection to the Doc Ock stuff. But I assumed it was like that because she has like these metal gauntlets, so I guess they're like generating them. My main thing about her costume is really what Mike was saying, that the digital coloring at this point, Her costume is black and yellow, and the yellow is just really garish most of the time when we see her. And she tries to explain this great game by using a Mortal Kombat reference, because it's the 90s, I guess. But
that's also dumb because they don't kill each other in this game.
yeah,
So it's not Mortal Kombat at all. The only thing that's similar is that they fight.
Yep.
well, yeah, and I'm still not clear on the rules because then she fights Ben, but then has to like leave. Like you have to initiate a fight initially so that they know that you're gonna come again.
Yeah.
So that they can set up a defense. Like it can't be an ambush.
No, I think the way they say it is they have to be able to assess the situation. And the reason that she gets called off is because the new Green Goblin shows up.
Yeah. But regardless, it's conveniently drawing out this arc and turning it into another mini crossover within a crossover. And I love how Ellis is still there this whole time, and he thinks he's going to get a Pulitzer for writing about the Scarlet Spider versus Joystick.
But that's not even the first time someone in a Spider-Man comic has like mentioned getting a Pulitzer for articles that would not get you a Pulitzer, like ever, especially in this universe.
Lois Lane's gotten a Pulitzer for writing about Superman.
Yeah, but that was probably that was after a career of work. She does these long exposés and interviews. Like, what is this Ken Ellis article going to be?
Well, also, Lois Lane's a better reporter and journalist than Ken Ellis.
So, and right as he says that, some debris almost falls on him, a la George Stacy, and the Green Goblin saves him from the debris. And then I like how we finally get the moment where Ben and Phil like talk to each other, and it's very quickly they're like, "Oh, we're not enemies. Let's chill." And so they agree to meet up later to track down Joystick because Ben has to dip real quick.
He's late for a date.
He's late for his date again, and then he shows up and he gets dumped. So that didn't really go anywhere.
No, he shows up, his date clotheslines a crook, and then he gets dumped.
Yeah. I wanted to say that Phil is one of the most unlikable characters out of what we've read so far, and that's really saying something.
I like Phil.
I love Phil. I don't know what you're talking about.
I hate how he's
so
written.
Outrageous that I love it.
No, like that's pretty great, but he also says like all the time and says bag it. Like, I don't even know if bag it was even a term that actual people used in the 90s to
it was
like canceling something.
The words like bag it, you know, if you, I mean, you're only in 1999. You didn't have half the decade like we did.
But yeah, it's a mid-40s guy trying to write. It's teenager, 90s teenager. It definitely is slightly
works.
And so then Joystick's the last one she defeated in the Great Game, El Toro Negro, the Black Bull. He wants revenge, and so he's cheating on the game, and he like kills the referee from the beginning.
Great.
And then we see that the next issue tease box in this issue does say that this is going to return to Amazing Spider-Man in the original numbering. So we only had 2 issues of this, and I don't know why.
Well, it makes sense at the end of this arc.
Yeah. But I'm just saying why they had to retitle the books in the first place. There's no real...
To fake people out and drive up sales.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's exactly why. So now we move into Green Goblin.
You answered your own question.
Yep. I think this is our best cover.
It's the best art and the best cover.
We got a moody cover of Gabi caught in Ben's web. And so the creative team here on this issue and for most of this Green Goblin series is Tom DeFalco and Scott McDaniel. And Mike, how do you know Scott McDaniel?
I know Scott McDaniel for really for 2 big reasons. He was the big artist with Jeff Johns when he drew The Flash, and he also was the artist on Batman when Ed Brubaker was drawing the book.
Yeah, he's mostly known for his DC stuff, He also drew the first several years of the Nightwing ongoing series.
Oh, that's right. I have that with me. I hit the first line of that because I bought it off you.
And he returned to Nightwing at some point down the line. And he's drawn Robin, he's drawn Batman, he's drawn Detective. But that Nightwing series doesn't launch until late 1996, so a full year after this. So at this point, he's mostly known as a Marvel guy. And before this series, he was working on Daredevil. He drew the Fall from Grace storyline, and we referenced that when Daredevil showed up a while ago. So getting into Phil Urich and his 90s slacker attitude and his creepy, he's just weird.
He's such a fucking weirdo.
It's like it's so cringy.
He has a crush on Joystick, and he has this weird way of viewing fights with female villains. He's basically asking, he's like, how does Captain America not get a boner when he fights Diamondback? And we learn, as I mentioned earlier, Joystick seemingly doesn't care about her secret identity because she gave him her business card to pass on to Ken Ellis. Her name is Janice Januszewski. And Phil kind of makes fun of her Polish name.
But her initials spell out joy, and that's the first part of her name.
I totally didn't even notice that.
Well, that's because you're dumb.
And so then Phil suits up, and we learn that it's painful in some way when he puts his mask on, because that's Norman Osborn's weird gas crap, whatever, that makes him go crazy. It never really fully gets to Phil, though Phil does become a villain way later. And then, Mike, was this your favorite moment of this issue?
It was my favorite moment because I was just like, oh wow, I could stop reading and put that on and feel much better about myself. So yeah, as Phil's flying around, he's trying to find Stunner in her hotel, which is like room 522.
Not Stunner.
That's right. I keep saying Stunner instead of Joystick. Joystick, not Stunner. They look practically the same. But he sees these kids watching an afternoon show with a bat-themed superhero. And since it's 1995, it must be Batman the Animated Series because that launched in 1993. So they'd probably be in a few seasons of that at this point. So then he tries to mimic Batman and get information from the kids.
Yeah, I thought that was great.
I liked it, but I was also just like, how the hell do the kids know where Joystick's room is?
Well, no, I mean, I think they're just like, hey, this is what we're in. I think it'd be funny if they showed like the kids like running along the hallways, and he was like tracking them through the windows, and they were actually finding the room for him. Yeah, so he finds the room, and the window's open, and he sets off a trap meant for Ben. And then security.
But like, how was Ben supposed to find that?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, he was supposed to meet up with. I guess he was supposed to meet up with Phil before this, even though they meet up again later. And I guess Phil was going to give him this info. Whatever.
But how would Joystick know that?
I don't know. But then security rushes in the room as Phil is leaving, and they say to call in Code Blue. And so Code Blue is an elite police unit created by Tom DeFalco during his run on Thor. And they show up in that book, and then the DeFalco written spinoff Thunderstrike. And in fact, they had a mini-series, which was a flip book with a few issues of Thunderstrike.
Vince, did you just buy Thunderstrike?
Yeah, I just bought the complete set of Thunderstrike. I don't have it yet, though. So
did you buy it for cheaper than it was at PhillyCon?
Yeah, I got it for like, I'm pretty sure it was like only like $30 with shipping. At NinjaCon it was $50.
Stay tuned for the Thunderstrike live podcast. No, that's not happening.
So then Gabi and Ben, they do meet up, and they agree not to play into Joystick's game, or at least that's what Ben says. And then Phil's like, nah, fuck that. So he goes right after Joystick. But then Toro Negro shows up, and Ben does really right after. And then honestly, like, I was digging the Scott McDaniel art, but then this fight sequence it gets kind of confusing. McDaniel's really experimenting with layout and stuff like that. There are some fun ideas here, but they didn't really all work for me.
I think a lot of the problems of it are, I think the art looks fine. They just don't know where to put the text boxes at.
Yeah.
But I'd say a big detriment to Scott McDaniel's art here is, like I said, that digital coloring, because it's like so matte finished, like it's so vibrant in the colors that you can't even see like the lines on the characters. It's sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like so wild. Like, and I was listening to like other podcasts, then they were talking about Marvel's digital coloring. Like, it took them years to figure this out. So like apparently they don't figure out adequately how to digitally color books until like well into like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Also, Mike said something about the Punisher earlier, and when El Toro Negro shows up, he is referred to as a Frank Castle wannabe. So
Yeah.
it comes full circle.
Isn't that like every gun-toting character since the Punisher's creation, though?
You mean every character in the 90s? Yes.
And so Phil saves Joystick's life and lets her get away. Though she offers him a kiss, and he takes the kiss but doesn't take his mask off. And I'm like, does he not want to reveal his secret identity? Does he think it's a trap? Whatever.
He doesn't take the mask off because Batman doesn't take the mask off.
True. And then Ben webs up El Toro Negro, and I don't think we hear from him ever again. And then we get Ben and Phil arguing about the whole deal, and Phil explains his motivation. And this is why I think he's a hilarious character, because he's not Spider-Man. He doesn't want to be a straight-up hero. He's not like killing people. He's not a vigilante. He's not a villain like the former Green Goblins. He basically says he's in it for the lulz.
Yeah. I know, he's just a shit poster.
He's in it for the jollies, man. Yeah,
that's his motivation, and I love that. It's hilarious.
That is pretty great.
It's like this weird mix between like a slacker hero, kind of like one of my favorites, Starman, and then just like this weird vigilante thing. He kind of just like stumbles through life. And I love this Green Goblin book. I'm pretty sure this is the only issue we'll read of it during this podcast, though we did read Phil's first 2 appearances. And I'd like to remind everyone that the entire Green Goblin run, including his first appearances, and a few crossovers, such as this Scarlet Spider issue, is collected in a trade, Green Goblin, A Lighter Shade of Green. So it's nice and thick. Pick it up.
That is very thick.
Didn't we see that at PhillyCon? I think we saw one of those there.
Probably. And so yeah, Joystick, she might have one more appearance. We'll double check when we get there. Otherwise, she joins the Thunderbolts way down the line.
Was she like good in the Thunderbolts, or was she just like a throwaway character to round out the team?
I have no idea. I haven't read that era of Thunderbolts. When I was looking at appearances, she's in it for quite a while though. So she's not just like one that they immediately kill, like as they'll often do with Suicide Squad characters or Thunderbolts. So now we get back to the main crossover, and actually, I'll take everything back. This is the best cover of this arc.
It's the best cover, but it's terrible.
So this is the iconic cover by John Romita Jr. of the Scarlet Spider firing an Uzi.
From web slinger to gunslinger.
And
I like how in the scans for reading, right under it, it says Scarlet Spider #2 newsstand edition cover. They were very confident to throw that on the newsstands.
So we do have John Romita Jr. on the interiors again as well, and this is written by the usual Howard Mackey. And I want to mention, it happens a bit later, but Ben makes a web parachute to infiltrate Ock's base, which is
paraglider he made last issue.
Yeah, it's way better than water skis and a glider. This is tolerable. So Doc Ock catches that undercover FBI agent that we were seeing earlier, because another agent tries to seduce him, and I guess that his plan was to go hook up with her in the back of the lab.
She was a honeypot.
Yep.
She was luring him in.
And so then they strap him down and they use him as a shell of sorts to project a hard light version of the Scarlet Spider.
They strip him first, which is odd. I'm like,
I don't understand. Why do they need him to do this?
Yeah, I guess you need a body, but like he's not controlling it because he's not going along with it. It doesn't make much sense. And then we get the full reveal of Ock's AI buddy, which is the master programmer. And like this is not an existing character, and I don't think they're really show up again. And so I'm like, I don't care. But this has been teased to us for like 3 arcs. And then there's a big explosion, whatever. And then the hologram Scarlet Spider breaks out, and somehow he can use webbing.
Endless amounts of it.
Yeah, just like a shitload. And he webs up the Daily Bugle building and tries to pull it over with webbing.
We're going to talk about Stunner being finally revealed as what her actual thing is.
Yeah, so Stunner, we get her thing, and she's just a hologram, which I've mentioned before. Like it's kind of been hinted at because she would randomly disappear before, but we learned that she's really just this obese woman, which is kind of weird. And her real name is Angelina Brancale. I don't Italian, I'm sure, of some sort. Excuse my pronunciation. So I don't know. I think Stunner's like that makes Stunner kind of interesting. If you removed her from all this actual plot, like her take on the VR thing is way more interesting than all this shit.
I feel like she wasn't going to be in this arc. And then they're like, wait a second, we have another VR related character, we might as well put her in here because she does nothing in this arc.
And then the hologram Scarlet Spider, he pulls a gun out of thin air. So and it's for like one panel. And we don't even get like the replication of the shot on the cover. I was super disappointed. I was expecting Ben Reilly to, like the actual Ben, to use a gun. And then even this hologram hardly uses it.
Yeah, he only uses it for like that one or two panels.
And then, so Ben webs up the fake one and then rips apart his webbing to show the cops, and the hologram disappeared, just like Stunner has in the past.
Yeah.
So now the cops and Jameson want the Scarlet Spider crucified, which leads us to kind of the status quo conclusion. So then this last part, it's a kind of cool concept for the cover. There's like skeleton warriors and dinosaurs and aliens with jetpacks. But as we've beaten to death, Sienkiewicz art just doesn't work.
Well, what's interesting on this issue is it's Sienkiewicz and Palmiotti now doing the finishes.
Yeah. Which last
issue is just Palmiotti.
Yeah. And like I didn't think to compare, but like it's not super noticeable, the difference.
Not really.
So finally realizes that Ben is a terrible bodyguard and he needs to fire him, which like every time that came up before, I'm like, you should have fired him in the first place. He's your bodyguard who's never there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was only his bodyguard for like 4 days, and he was late 3 of those days, and then the 4th one he just wasn't there at all.
Yeah. Being a bodyguard, a terrible job for Spider-Man. For Superman as well, just because the way their secret identities work, how they have to run off all the time. So then the hologram spider destroys the apartment that Trainer and Ben share. So Ben's personal life is getting all wrecked, so we'll get a new status quo soon, I assume.
Hold on, I want to share this line about Stunner here before we get further in this issue that says that she has been liberated, empowered, freed from the confines, the restrictions imposed upon her by her own massive body. It's just
He's on life support, by the way. They make sure to say that.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if the stunner thing was written like 10 years later, there could have possibly been some subtlety and like some interesting dialogue about like personal beauty and like expectations and stuff like that. But it's just dumb.
I'd like to see how Dan Slott handled this after he handled Anna Maria.
He does use stunner.
Oh, he does?
Yeah, in Superior, which is Otto. So
that makes sense.
Actually, I think it's after Superior. She like her like AI awakens later, and she runs into, I don't know. It happens at some point. I don't think it'll be on the podcast though. And then we learn that Doc Ock's ultimate plan in the final issue of the story is to merge cyberspace and reality. And somehow that works. And Trainer explains that will cause reality storms, which I guess are bad.
Yeah, this is all really stupid, but what's even more stupid and actually makes me very angry is that Seward's in the internet, I guess, which whatever, I can deal with that, it's 90s, but somehow he connects to this answering machine in Ben's apartment.
Yeah, I don't.
He was also able to like go on an ATM video screen in the last.
Yeah, he did that the last episode when you weren't on. And then Alistair Smythe corners Ock Squad, but then he gets quickly betrayed by So, and then So gets immediately killed by the Pro, who's this contract killer, who is barely in these arcs. But then Ock is able to execute her plan, and all kinds of bullshit starts appearing. And then this AI Jesus, the master programmer, comes into reality. And there's like this weird romantic moment where he and Ock hug each other, and they're like, "We're finally united." But the failsafe is that Trainer has been making a VR virus on a chip, and Ben just has to plug it in, and that gets resolved. Like this whole thing, like she merges cyberspace and reality, and then like 2 pages later, it's over.
Well, what's funny is he develops this Deus Ex Machina, and I can only think about was this supposed to be on the nose? Because the name of this specific issue is Arachnus Ex Machina, Spider in the Machine. And I was like, was this supposed to be intentional?
Yeah, it's super anticlimactic. And then it's just over. Ock gets away. We don't see her get away, but she's away. I guess the master programmer died or whatever. But Trainer is still catatonic for some reason. But the main thing is that Scarlet Spider's reputation is ruined. So instead of taking the power and responsibility route and trying to repair his reputation, Ben's plan is to just spin, and just get rid of his costume and become actual Spider-Man. Which I think this is kind of hilarious, but also kind of dumb. And it's also, part of it is dumb anyways, because Spider-Man, like the Spider-Man identity is already hounded all the time, constantly by Jonah and the cops. So the next episode, we will get into the new Spider-Man costume for Ben Reilly and the debut of the new title, Sensational Spider-Man.
Oh, look at what Billy, he's already changing the costume on little Ben.
And your boy's ripped. Like, do you see this? What a man.
And also take note of his hair color, which I'm hoping we get to that soon.
Yeah.
All right.
That definitely should be a thing.
So now we move into the final part of this episode.
I hate you so much.
With New Warriors 66. It's a pretty crazy cover with all the speedballs, little bouncy effects.
I have so many questions. The first being, why is this issue in this collection? Ben's in it for 3 panels.
I mean, I totally agree. So this is totally in the complete Clone Saga Epic paperback. Or I guess we're at the Ben Reilly part at this point. But as a New Warriors fan, This should totally not be in here. Just like whatever the last issue or the second to last, the most recent other New Warriors one that we read, 65, where they were like trying to go rescue Namorita, that also had like nothing to do with the Clone Saga. But this issue, Ben is literally in the book for 3 pages, and there's no reference at all to anything Clone Saga related.
Nope.
So the creative team, it's still Evan Skolnick and Patch Zurcher like last time. And so the actual Clone Saga related stuff, I'll get out of the way, all the Ben related stuff, and then I'll have fun just talking about this insane story. So Ben resolves his power struggle that he's been having with Justice since joining the team.
I'm gonna say Justice acts like a complete dick for no reason again.
Yeah, he's just a dick in general. And Ben almost reveals his secret identity to Justice, and then it's implied he would reveal to the whole team later, and then he doesn't. So, I mean, they kind of fix the like team dynamic, but otherwise nothing really happens related to Ben. And then there's a little bit of further developments for Justice. He's being angsty over Firestar's recent developments, how her powers are like not healthy, and so they're possibly going to try and start a family, despite her not even being out of high school yet, which he acknowledges in this issue.
What's weird is he's just staring at a picture like of her on his computer screen, but it's not just a picture. It's like it's like in one of the old Marvel trading cards with the stats index on it.
But then, right as he's considering starting a family with Firestar, he gets a booty call from the Israeli superhero Sabra, who was, I assume, originally introduced in Contest of Champions. And it's worth noting that Justice, Vance Astrovic, he is also Jewish. So if he hooks up with Sabra, we got some nice kosher loving, good representation in comic books. But that's all an interlude for like 3 pages, halfway in the middle of the book. Now the rest of this issue is a Speedball solo story, which heavily references the original Ditko series. And you guys infamously have hated New Warriors. I think this is the best New Warriors issue we've read on this podcast.
I'm not going to disagree with that. I agree with you. I fully agree.
Despite it having nothing to do with Spider-Man. So I'm going to try and go through this kind of quickly, but also it's just funny. Speedball, Robbie Baldwin, he heads home to Springdale, Connecticut to catch up with his father and chill out. And his father is a district attorney, and apparently a pretty bad one, because there's been a giant jailbreak and all of the criminals in this town have escaped. And we see some goons chasing Niels the cat, who is a cat who has the same powers as Speedball. And Robbie stops by his 2-bedroom ranch home. And the way that Pat Zurcher draws this is totally not a 2-bedroom home.
Oh, it's a mansion.
Yeah, this is a pretty significantly sized house. So that's some sloppy art editing. And we also get a reference to, and this doesn't necessarily work with the sliding time scale, but it's obscure enough that it's funny and it works. We get a reference to how red M&Ms were out of commission from 1976 to 1987 because there was a scare over red food dye in 1976, which led a lot of food producers to stop using red dyes. In fact, the red M&M didn't even use that dye. It was entirely safe, but they decided to just get rid of the red M&M just to be safe in case people would freak out anyways. And they replaced it with the orange M&M. And then in 1987, they brought the red back, but they kept the orange.
I also want to say there's a George Bush reference in here.
Yep.
And this is the second George Bush reference I've read in a comic this week. It won't be out for another week until next week, but the last episode of the Cowcast we did for The Lonely Place of Dying, Marv Wolfman makes a George Bush reference.
Nice. And so Robbie's parents divorced early on in the New Warriors run, and his mother is an actress, and she co-stars on Secret Hospital with Mary Jane. So it makes sense that this New Warriors book is stuffed in with the Spider-Man line. Not really, but there's the connection. And so it's this whole Ditko thing. In the original series, his actress mother and his lawyer father would just constantly have these brutal arguments in front of their son over their expectations for him and like just philosophy.
This
And
sounds very Ditko.
yeah, basically like it's very similar to Hawk and Dove, where Hawk is supposed to be this like hardline conservative, like bully kind of guy, and then Dove is like in the original Hawk and Dove stories, it's really cringy because Dove is just like super, super submissive and like shitty and is a terrible Supergirl. And in fact, there is an issue in the original Speedball run where they get into such an argument that like Robbie runs away, like he leaves the house, and they're like, "Oh no, have we forced him to become a drug addict prostitute?"
What?
It's really weird. And so Robbie promises to not put on his costume while he's in town because in Springdale, it's allegedly the only town in America where vigilantes are completely banned, like in the law.
Until Civil War.
Yeah. And he's not going to get in costume despite all the villains running around. Oh, also, due to Speedball's actions in Civil War, which again, New Warriors, that was all an accident, both of his parents disowned him. Fucked up though.
No, they're totally in the right.
But Speedball doesn't follow that, so he puts on his costume, and this is literally a reunion of every insane or super boring Ditko villain from the solo series.
I like the two-legged rat.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't get. They have a page where it's like headshots of every villain. I thought it'd be hilarious if they put footnotes on every single one. They don't do that, unfortunately, but I got you. So if you were wondering, in order of how they appear in this lineup, the bug-eyed voice first appeared in Speedball number 6. The Ghost of Springdale High is from 4.
Why is he a ghost, but he's wearing armor?
Bonehead is from 8. Leaper Logan is from 3. The Harlequin Hitman, which the Harlequin Hitman is clearly just like a question / Mr. A ripoff. He's from number 7. The Basher and the Two-Legged Rat, they teamed up in number 5. And in the original story, for like most of the issue, you're not sure whether the Two-Legged Rat is actually this mutant rat or if he's a creepy guy with a mask, but he is just a creepy guy with a mask. And then the Sticker, who's like a muck monster, like kind of glob dude, he was from Speedball number 2.
Looks like Chemo.
But we do get a footnote for a flashback to Speedball's origin in the first issue of that series. And so he catches literally all of his villains doing shit together, and he starts a fight. And at one point, 2 of the villains start shooting him with guns. And Speedball's powers, he's basically bulletproof because he absorbs kinetic energy. And then he goes like this, and he goes, bang, bang. And I thought that was fucking badass. Speedball's powers are awesome.
No, they're not.
And he jokes about how he ever struggled with these thugs back then.
Hey, Vince. Just to stop you for a moment. You want to know who has kinetic energy powers that's really cool? This guy.
Yeah. It's different, though. I'd say Speedballs, they're more visually impressive.
No. Gambits are pink, and that's an awesome color for him.
But Speedball is struggling with his powers. He's struggling with his powers again now due to the stupid New Warriors ongoing plot lines. So it's slightly ironic. But he gets knocked out by Clyde, a.k.a. Rebound. And this is also hilarious because Clyde fancies himself to be this big supervillain. And I don't know if you guys noticed, he keeps a framed photo of Dr. Doom in his evil lab as inspiration.
I mean, wouldn't you?
Yeah. And also the Clyde, so he binds up Speedball like on the wall. Think like Incredibles with the scene in the Incredibles where they have the whole family bound up. And he also has the cat, Niels the cat, bound up next to Speedball. And then Clyde explains this giant retcon that apparently he was always behind all of Speedball's villains from the Solo series, which this totally doesn't match up well with the original stories, but whatever, I guess. And then Niels the cat saves the day with a kinetic furball, and then it's just over. Robbie takes Niels back with him to New York, and as I said, I picked up this issue the other day because this is going in my Speedball custom bind, because I definitely can't trust Marvel to make a Speedball collection anytime soon.
Well, I have a question. How much is those issues going to run you? Because those are Steve Ditko like drawn and written issues, right?
They're written by him and I guess plotted because they're drawn by him and I guess plotted because it's Marvel style, but they're not scripted by him. The original Speedball stories, they're actually fucking terrible. But it's really weird. I feel like I may have actually mentioned this in a previous podcast, but I don't think so. So the deal with Speedball is the 25th anniversary or the 30th anniversary maybe of the Marvel Universe, looking at Fantastic Four #1 as the starting point, was coming up. And so Marvel's owners at the time, they wanted this big deal thing. And so Jim Shooter's like, all right, I'll create an entirely new line. And that would eventually become the new universe. But Tom DeFalco, I believe Tom DeFalco, actually, that might be wrong, but some editor was like, all right, I want to be in charge of this because I want to, build my rep and I'm going to make this be a big success. And all they did was spend like a bunch of money, like tens of thousands of dollars, developing Speedball with Steve Ditko.
God.
And so Jim Shooter is like, what have you done? And he's like, I got this thing Speedball. And Jim Shooter was like, this is not going to work. And so then we got the actual new universe, which Jim Shooter took over. And that was a failure anyways.
I can only picture like Jim Shooter being furious. Like, yeah. If you ever you've seen the Laser Cats skits for SNL.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine it's like when Sandberg goes in to present it and Lorne Michaels just glares at him. He's like, "Get the hell out of my office." Yeah. I almost felt like it almost plays exactly out like that.
But Ditko made so many Speedball stories, and his series lasted, I believe, only 10 issues, and it was canceled. But there must have been just excess Speedball stories, because then over the next 8 years, in their filler magazines like Marvel Comics Presents or Marvel Superheroes, there would just be random Speedball stories all the time, still drawn by Ditko, 5 years later. And so the reading order and where you got to all get it through is super confusing. So it would be super convenient if Marvel actually put out a Speedball collection, but I don't think anyone would buy it. But it's also so confusing and it's not very good that I don't expect them to do it. And so just for the oddity and because Steve Ditko, I'm going to do that. And so if it weren't for this podcast, I wouldn't know that this issue is a great kind of epilogue to that series. Now, to contradict everything I just said, in New Warriors 70, which thankfully we will not be reading for this podcast, it is revealed that the Speedball that readers have been following for the past 20 issues is actually an impersonator from the future. And so this story does not star Robbie Baldwin. So some impersonator is hanging out with his dad, somehow knows all of his villains. It doesn't make any sense. So that is a stupid retcon. But that was New Warriors.
The Speedball clone saga coming to a streaming service near you.
Shut the fuck up.
We could do a spinoff. So I believe we only have one more issue of New Warriors to cover on the podcast, and it is part of a crossover. So I assume that Ben will actually be in it.
Thank God.
So that is basically it. You guys have any final thoughts on this episode?
Dan Jurgens comes in the next episode. I'm excited to see that as a big Dan Jurgens fan. Mm-hmm. I'm excited to see what Ben will actually do as Spider-Man. So I'm wondering if that's going to bring in more actual classic villains, or they're gonna keep trying to build the rogues gallery with these new villains that I don't really enjoy. But I'm happy this VR bullshit's over, and it looks like I'm hoping for a brighter spot, but I honestly don't think that's going to happen.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty much my thoughts. I'll probably I might put a timestamp or I don't know.
Oh, you should.
For the New Warrior stuff, if people want to just skip that or skip to it. We might have some Speedball fans coming on.
Well, if you wanted to skip to it, they would have already had to have listened to that point because we're talking about it now.
Well, no, yeah, whatever. All right, so thanks for watching. Tune in next episode. Peace.
Get on safe.